Hi everyone and welcome to India Ka Startup. This is 5 Paisa's brand new property where we are going to be interviewing a new founder every week. We are going to be talking about their buzzing startups, what makes them tick, what doesn't, what their future plans are. So, in case if you are interested in the startup space, then this is definitely the place to be. I am Anchal Pathak, and with me I have Shivam Singla. He is the founder of Legality. It is India's leading e-signing platform. So let's find out what it is all about. Shivam, thank you so much for joining us here today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Anchal. Thank you for having me here.
So, Shivam, how is the weather in Gurgaon? You have to tell me that because we've been battling with rains the past few days here in Mumbai. We are used to it, but it keeps coming back. It keeps coming back, and it doesn't go. So, is Gurgaon all sunshine and happiness?
I guess I have mixed feelings about the weather here, but nothing too much to complain about yet.
Okay, so I will just start with the questions, considering that we've had it like started it on the sunshiny note. So, firstly, I would like to ask you about your inspiration behind Legality. What inspired you to start it? Where did the idea come from exactly?
Right. So I would say that the inspiration behind legality comes from the realization that agreements are fundamental to business, right? Businesses across industries, across scale, need to regularly enter into agreements and other similar documents with their customers, vendors, employees, investors, and while carrying out a number of other legal and compliance matters, right? And the entire uh, process around documentation, uh, while it's so widespread, while it's so common and so fundamental, is broken because it's completely dependent upon paper, right? And because it's dependent upon paper, it makes the entire experience of the transaction very, very cumbersome, very, very time consuming, and very, very costly. We saw that in because documents are based on paper, there were activities involved like printing. You need to print a document, you need to scan a document, you need to have runners around moving with documents, you need to sometimes have customers or third parties move around to come and execute documents and agreements. uh, Paper documents need to be filled manually, which leads to errors. Paper can catch fire, paper can get lost. And so in a sense that the paper makes the entire process of formalizing business relationships very, very cumbersome. And we saw that if it's so widespread, right, and it's a fundamental process to the economy, we can definitely do something to solve it. And that's where the idea and the inspiration of legality came from, that we believe that we can build a platform for Indian businesses where businesses, irrespective of what industry they are from, what scale they are of, can come and digitize and automate their documentation processes.
Right. So you said that this is specifically for Indian businesses, and one thing that pops up in all your literature is that legality is made for India. So what exactly do you mean by that?
Right. So when we entered the Indian market, we saw that by that time there had been some movement in the Western markets, specifically in US and Western Europe, where some problems around documentation had started to get solved. And when we entered the Indian market, we realized that there had been attempts of implementing those solutions which were popular in the West, or there were attempts to implement those in India, right? But none of those attempts worked at scale, because the Indian ground reality had been very different, right? Because Indian laws are very different. What is a signature in India? What is a e-signature in India? How do you prove a document in the court of law in India? What How do people actually perceive risk on the ground? What are the ground realities? What are the workflows? So everything around documentation in India was very different from what it was in the West, and which is why those solutions had not worked, right? And because of these unsuccessful attempts, some part of the market had started to believe that digital document e-sign or digital documentation could not work in India, right? So that's where we stepped in, and we built the platform from ground up, understanding the entire ecosystem, understanding what the laws are, what is a document, how do you prove a document, if we had to move this entire process digitally, what do you need to do, what are, like how do Indian businesses do these things at on a ground at the ground level currently, and how can we improve those things further. And based on that, we came up with a made for India SaaS product. And that's why you see that in all our literature we focus a lot on being made for India, made in India, and made for India.
Right. When you started doing the ground research, as you mentioned, did you think that at that point of time, India was actually ready for something like this kind of innovation? Or like, do you think it is now after all your efforts that you have put in?
So I would say that we have definitely contributed to some extent, to the limited extent we could, given that India is such a large market. But even when we entered the market, there had been some decent amount of push from the ecosystem, from the government to go digital across processes. We also tapped on the entire India Stack model that the government was pushing, the entire Digital India movement that the government was pushing for. So I would say that there was indeed a good amount of push in across the economy to go digital, but there were not the particular problem of documentation digitization, of agreement digitization, and the process around it, that had not been solved when before us that well. So yeah.
Okay, so you also mentioned the Western counterparts. Let's
Mm.
talk about DocuSign now. It has a
Right.
market cap of more than $50 billion. Do you
Right.
think Legality has the opportunity in India to reach such heights? Can your investors expect 500x returns in a couple of years? And if so, can I please invest?
Right. So I think India is a large market, specifically for this problem, for sure. Both the Indian business base and the consumer base is growing very rapidly, both of which are very comfortable, and in fact keen to go digital and adopt digital solutions. And we have seen that work out quite well. And given how, as I said, given how fundamental the process of agreements and documents is to the all the economic activities, I do believe that there is a significantly large and equally attractive market opportunity in India as well. And without commenting on any specific numbers, I'm sure all our investors would see very healthy returns in the coming times.
Good to know. Thanks for the tip. Moving on. So the pandemic was really bad for most businesses in India. A lot of offline businesses, online businesses obviously boomed. Do you think this affected your business positively? I mean,
Right,
obviously, but in
right,
what ways?
right. So as you said, like just like how pandemic accelerated the adoption of most digital solutions, it did the same for us as well. It did that in two ways particularly. One is that it opened up a lot of new use cases where people became comfortable with adopting digital solutions for their documents. Before pandemic, we used to see that people used to have concerns over digitizing their documents, which used to be worth a few lakhs as well. They used to ask us whether it's safe, and we used to that those used to be the primary concerns. Obviously, they used to get answered once we used to run them through the process and everything, but there used to be those concerns. And after the pandemic, we see that even multi-hundred crore, multi-thousand crore deals are regularly executed through a platform. So I would say that's an example of one kind of impact it has, the pandemic has had. And secondly, in terms of the kind of industries that started to adopt such solutions, like Legality specifically, also expanded rapidly. Before the pandemic, while there was in like a general keenness to adopt digital solutions because of the digital movement, digital India movement across the economy, but we used to see special keenness from the BFSI space, right? And so what the pandemic did is it obviously accelerated that keenness in the BFSI space, but it also made all the non-BFSI sectors very much more keen in adopting digital solutions like ours.
Right. So again, talking about your clients, you have an interesting mix. You have startups like Dunzo, Razorpay, WeWork, Cars24, and at the same time, more traditional BFSI clients. There's HDFC, there's ICICI Lombard, and of course there are more. So again, like, did you face any sort? How easy or difficult was it to
Hmm.
bring them on board? Did they have certain apprehensions while while coming on board with you?
Right, right. So, indeed, it was definitely something, not a very easy task to make the concept of digital documentation popular in the traditional Indian enterprises, right? And the reason for that has been that legal documents or agreements or all sorts of legal documents in nature are very critical for a business, right? Because they define the rights, the liabilities, and they are means of different compliances, right? So, and traditional businesses are very, very heavy on compliances, are very, very do try to be very clean with their compliances. So when we started, we obviously went to the traditional businesses, and we realized that all of them wanted some kind of market validation. Even though they were keen on such solutions, they wanted some market validation, and they worked on an idea of pre-selection, where if, let's say, we went to one bank, that bank wanted to know if a bank of their stature is already using us, right? If we went to an FMCG brand, they wanted to know if a FMCG brand of a similar stature as theirs is already using us. So we saw that there was that uh, people that companies were looking for that pre-validation, and that we fixed over time by ensuring that we attacked, or we targeted very specific kind of businesses who were more keen to adopt such solutions, maybe startups or other similar digital native businesses which were more comfortable around it. And then slowly we moved up market and made inroads into the enterprise space, where today most of the
Right.
big financial conglomerates are our clients.
Right. So these were, I mean, obviously, you're doing a lot of B2B work. What about B2C? Are you making any products specifically directly for the Indian customer?
Right, right. So I think we like to call ourselves B2B2C, right? Because even though we sell to the business, who as a client, we look at the business as a client, but our client business uses our application to get documents executed from third parties, right? Their customers, their vendors, their employees, their investors, right? And in that process, it's not only the our client business who's benefiting, it's also the end user which is benefiting a lot from the process, right? Because before legality, before digital execution, that customer will have to do a lot of things physically. The customer will have to move physically to come to a branch or sign the paper digitally and do a lot of those things, right? So I think in that sense, we even now we have a direct impact on the end consumer as well, where in fact recently we were talking to one of our big MFI clients, and we realized that before legality, some of their customers used to travel up to 25 kilometers to actually come to the branch and sign a document, right? And because it's MFI
Right.
institution, we are talking about blue collar workers. So in the process, they used to lose up to half a day or sometimes full day of their daily wages, right? And but now, since they have our client business, that MFI has implemented legality, the end customer, the blue collar worker, does not need to move. They can sign the document right through their phone, saving them the entire hassle of traveling 25 kilometers and wasting a daily wage of the entire
Right.
day. So I think in that way we are directly impacting the end customer already. And at least for the next 2 years, we're looking at continuing to follow the same model. After that, if we decide to go solve some problems directly at the consumer level, I think that's something that time will tell.
Right. Well, from someone who has totally forgotten how to hold a pen and write, there's a personal thank you coming from my side. It'll definitely help people like me a lot. Okay, so Shivam, who are the current entrepreneurs, we can say your peers, who inspire you?
Right. So I think the ecosystem generally in the country has matured a lot, and there's something to learn from every entrepreneur out there, right? But if I look at in terms of impact, I do feel that the Flipkart founders, right, Sachin Bansal and Bini Bansal, had a major impact on the ecosystem because whatever the kind of confidence we see especially the startup and the tech ecosystem in India today has been possible because of what Flipkart did manage to do. So from that perspective, I do believe that the Flipkart founders Bansal and Benny Bansal are people who I really look up to.
That's great. And coming to a more easygoing and fun question, and this is something that I like to ask everyone: what is your pandemic hobby? And do you still keep it? Are you still able to maintain it now that the world has started opening up?
Right, right. So I think the pandemic hobby has been to focus a lot on yoga and to read a lot about other businesses. And I think right now, considering that most of our work is still happening remotely, I think I'm still being fortunately managing to uh, stick with it.
Right. And also, like, obviously, you're an entrepreneur, your work will take up most of your time. How do you manage to stay stress free? How do you manage your work life balance? Does it work out for you, or is it like 90% work and 10% sleep?
Right, right. So I think as an entrepreneur, you go through phases where there are some phases where, especially when there are specific time durations, for example, at the end of the quarter or the beginning of the quarter, or or when a particular event, for example, a financing round is happening in the organization. I think there are certain times where it can become really all-encompassing, where you do not have an option but to devote all your energies towards work. But I think at the same time, you do. There are certain phases where you can be a little more balanced and give yourself enough time to relax as well.
Well, that's good to know. And Shivam, that's all from me today. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for your time. And we hope that you are able to accomplish whatever you set out to achieve with Legality and even more. Again, thank you for making time for us, and see you soon. Bye.
Thank you, Anjali.